Welcome to another Mind Focus Running Supergroup session. And today we've got a fantastic special guest in Isobel Ross. Many of you will know Isobel from her Peak Endurance running podcast, which it's amazing. Right? How many have you done now, Isobel?
Oh, I should know this because I was just getting podcast ready before this, about 145 or something. No, yeah, something like that, about 145.
Yeah.
I can't believe it.
Yeah. And you do one once a week?
Once a week. Occasionally I'll put out an extra one, but at the moment I'm actually considering going to once a fortnight because it is a lot of work. To do kind of just as a thing on the side, you know?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, like we do one of these once a month when we're lucky. Yeah. And yeah, even that's quite a bit of work.
Yeah.
Isobel, we've sort of known each other for a few years, sort of mainly through Aura and things. And just having a look through your running background, what really stands out when you have a look on DUV are the really difficult, longer trail races that you've done, and you seem to have really excelled in those. So, a second at Alpine Challenge, a fifth at the Canadian Death Race. Now, I don't even know how hard that is, but it sounds hard. and first place at Great Southern Endurance Run, which is terribly difficult. So when most people think of you these days, I guess it's in terms of Barkley, and I guess I started to get a bit of an inkling of what was going on when I saw on your Facebook account that you traveled to Tennessee in 2018 for the Barkley Fall Classic. And for people who don't know, Barkley Fall Classic happens in Frozen Head Park, but in September every year, and it's 50 Ks. And I've had some friends run that, and they curse on how difficult that 50K is. Anyway, when I saw you going there, I thought, man, I think you were actually in Canada at the time.
Yeah, so I was living in Canada.
Yeah, and I thought that's still a long way to travel for a run.
Yeah.
So was the decision to go there with the long-term view of running a full Barkley, or was it come later?
No. I ran it hoping that would help with my application to get into Barkley, basically, and also give me an opportunity to look around the park and see it a bit. Yeah. That's all exactly how it worked out.
Yeah. And would you suggest that as a possible first step for running Barkley, if anybody was interested?
I think it shows that you're serious about the race, that if you're willing to travel that far or make the effort to find out a bit more about the area by going there, that it shows that you're more serious. And I truly believe that did help with my application.
Oh, fantastic. Look, I guess we didn't arrange this until a few weeks ago, and it was mainly because I was on Strava and I saw that you'd done a run and you'd called it nav training, and I thought, well, Isobel isn't nav training for the Melbourne Marathon.
Let's hope not.
And I thought perhaps she's running Barkley again. So that's when we had the chat, and you said, yeah, timing's fantastic because at the end of this week, as we talk, you're getting on a plane to go and do it all again, which amazing. So with Barkley, there is a lot of mystery, secret business around the race, and we're sort of talking about that just before. How you entered the event, what date the race is on. So I'm going to ask some questions, and the rest of the Mind Focus Running guys will hopefully have some questions to ask as well. But if there are any that cross that threshold, just say, no, I can't answer that. So I'll start off with, so how do you enter the event?
That old chestnut. Yeah.
How many times do you get asked that?
I do actually get asked that. And I was saying that on the Coaching Roundtable podcast today, that actually part of the point of it being difficult to find out how to get in proves by you finding out that you are up to the challenge of Barkley. If you can't even go to the effort of figuring out how to get in and have to ask somebody, give me it all on a silver platter, then you're probably not going to be capable of facing the challenges involved in the race itself, because the first challenge is figuring it out. And it took me a long time, and, a little tidbit of information here and a tidbit of information there, and then just putting it all together. And then, a lot of praying as well that I was actually right, because you're never 100% sure. And it's not meant to be, oh, well, if you ask someone, they'll just tell you. So people who come out, I do get messages, on how to get in. And it's like, well, they've already failed the first test, because that's not how you get in. You don't get in by asking, flat out.
Yeah. I ran Vol State in Tennessee, which is another of Laz's races. And Laz was on his run across America while that was on. But I certainly got to understand a little bit about how Laz's mind works. And I think it doesn't matter how many Barkley movies you watch, and how many backyard ultras you follow. You don't sort of really get to understand it until you're sort of part of the process, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember, even though Laz wasn't there, there was a fellow by the name of Carl Lanyak who was the race director while Laz was away. And so Vol State is a 10-day, 10-day cutoff, and the first runners typically come in about 4 days. And the finish line is in a really remote spot on top of what's called Castle Rock. And when I finally got there in 7.5 days, I was really underwhelmed by the finish line, which was sort of a couple of gazebos sort of tied together, and that was it. And I said to Carl, I said, it must be so uncomfortable sitting here for 6 days. And he said, look, if Laz found out that I brought something comfortable here to sleep in, I'd be in real trouble. and he said that Laz at Vol State, the 6 days of suffering sitting on top of Castle Rock, that's his ultra marathon. Yeah. And I think you can see that in a lot of the events that he does.
Yeah, I think Laz likes to create races that is more of a, well, not more, but just as much a mental challenge as it is a physical one, so that it's a battle between the mind and the body, more than anything.
For sure. So take me through 2019. How did that go?
Well, I got there and I was, once again, I got there about a week early, and, just to help get over jet lag. And I had a bit of a, jog around the park here and there. Obviously I can only stick to the trails, can't go off trail. So that's what I did. and just had a look around as much as possible. And of course, you know, I don't know what the course is going to be. So even then I'm just guessing of where to look. Then, you know, he puts out the map the day before the race, and we copy onto our map from his master map. You're not allowed to take a photo of it or anything like that. You've actually got to sit there with the map, but everyone else wants to sit there with the map too. So it's a little bit of a squish, but you want to be sure that you've got it right too. So Stephen Redfern, who'd come over from Australia to help me out, he helped me with that too. And then, you know, I went to bed, and he can blow the conch from any time from midnight. So Stephen kindly stayed up all night so that if he blew the conch, he would come and wake me. But of course, it being Laz, he didn't blow the conch until like 8:20 in the morning. So poor Stephen stayed up for nothing. And to be honest, I didn't really sleep much anyway, because I was just probably panicking half the night and freezing the other half the night. So then, you know, once the conch went off and got all ready, and it's weird because, you know, it's Barkley, and you've got this big thing in your head, but at the end of the day, it's just another race, like really, and you're all just lining up, and there's the usual banter and chat and whatnot. But I was really, really nervous and having a little bit of a panic attack, because I you know, was such a big thing for me to get into it. So, and I really wasn't sure how I'd go, and I hadn't had as much training of navigation as I'd have liked. So I headed off, and, you know, the veterans really sprint off because they're trying to drop the virgins, because that's just tradition. Of course, so I got left behind, and I ended up doing a few of the books on my own, which was made a bit easier because it was daylight. And then I made a couple of errors, and so I ended up just waiting for some other people, which was one veteran and another virgin. She'd actually been at the Barkley Fall Classic when I'd been there. She'd won it. I'd come fifth, and she got in automatically because she won. And we sort of joined forces. But as much as we wanted to stay with the veteran, he was, you know, he'd been doing it for years. So he was just he was walking rather than running, which, you know, that's fine. He wasn't after a finish, but, you know, I thought I would stick with them. I knew if I didn't, I was just going to get lost. But I thought this way I can see the books and find them all, and that will stand me in a good stead for the next time I come back, because I was already planning that I would come back. Of course, that's always up to Laz. And so I did finish the loop, but it was out of time, because eventually Shaka, that was the girl, the other virgin, we ended up on our own. And although we could navigate the course, because we didn't have a veteran with us, we couldn't find the books, because Laz writes the clues for the books in like cryptic crossword kind of language. It's, you know, it's very hard to understand. And there was one point where we were looking for a book for like an hour and a half, 2 hours, and it was night, and we just ended up just sitting on a rock, just, you know, like we've had enough of looking, we're just going to sit and chat and have something to eat. And then we got up, and 5 minutes later we found the book. So, you know, it could be something as silly as that. And then and so we finished, like I said, out of time, but we finished the loop, we got all the pages, and it was an awesome experience. But, you know, I was disappointed because I had wanted to go better. I knew I wouldn't finish on my first go. I mean, they say it takes a minimum of 2 to 3 attempts at the Barkley to understand and know the Barkley well enough to aim for a finish. So, I mean, that could be true, that might not be true, I don't know, but that's what they say kind of as a general rule. So this is my second go. I would have liked it if I could have done it in consecutive years like I was supposed to. So I reapplied to get back into 2020, and I got back in again. But then, of course, COVID happened, and I cancelled my flights and everything the week before I was due to leave, which was very disappointing. So I'm finally getting to use the credit that I had from that flight, but of course it's all devalued and everything, but, you know, it's better than nothing. And I'm finally, hopefully, you know, because there's still many hoops to get through just to leave the country, leaving on Sunday morning to try it again.
Terrific. And you've mentioned, you know, that it's a really mentally tasking event. And, you know, I guess it probably is the most mentally demanding event in the planet. And at Mind Focus Running, that's really a lot of our focus is in terms of that sort of mental preparation. Not that any of these guys are planning on Barkley, or none of them have told me they are. But how do you train your mind for that sort of experience? Because it must be amazing, like just goal setting, you know, and like you said, you know, there's the chance of actually finishing the thing.
I've always been relatively mentally strong in many ways, not in all of life, but in this sort of thing. I also feel that putting myself in positions where I suffer a lot helps me develop that mental strength, you know. So like, because I couldn't get to Barkley last year, I did my 7 Peaks FKT, which took me 67 hours or whatever, around that. And that gave me the confidence of knowing I could go for that long. And it was really hard and difficult, and it pushed me. And I just find if I keep finding something else to challenge me that's harder than before, then my mental toughness keeps improving. And to be honest, I think it's also just a little bit me.
So looking back, would you say Barkley 2019 is the hardest thing that you've done?
No, it wasn't, because by the time, because fairly early on, I knew I wasn't going to make the cutoff. So we were just going around the course. Yeah, I would say the 2 big runs I did last year were the hardest runs I've done.
Yeah. Okay.
But I'm sure if I do well at this Barkley, that will be the hardest, because that is the only way I will be successful at it.
How do you define success?
I would like to do a minimum of 2 loops. I'd like to do 3. I'd like to finish. I also need to be realistic. No woman has ever finished, and I think it's a very hard race for a woman to finish, and I honestly don't know who will be able to do that. So second best would be to finish 3 loops, and to me that would be a huge win. To finish one, to do better than last time would be a win too. So, you know, I just have to, Barkley's one of those races that you can't go, this is my goal and that's what I'm going to do, because I could get there and the race is completely not what I'm expecting, or the weather just absolutely, because it's got its kind of own microclimate at Frozen Head State Park, sorry. And like when I did it in 2019, I was wearing shorts and a singlet when I started because it was warm. I got stuck out there all night, and I'm in the snow and, you know, rain, and it was just miserable. So luckily I come from Australia, where we are so used to carrying mandatory kit. I had raincoats and all sorts of stuff with me that, you know, I'm sure the Americans who aren't used to carrying mandatory kit wouldn't necessarily have with them. So I was okay. The girl I was with, she had like this plastic poncho she'd got from the visitor centre, you know, for tourists who are going hiking. And I've got my proper seam sealed raincoat that Paul Ashton made me buy, you know, all those years ago, kind of thing. So it's like, at least I was prepared for that. But that's what I'm saying, is the weather can change, things can change, and it's not like a standard race where you go, I know this is generally what the weather's going to do. I know generally this is what the course is, or I know exactly what the course is. There's so many things that you don't know that it makes it hard to predict how you will go.
Right. Look, I've got a number of other questions, but I'll open it up to everybody else. Otherwise, it'll just be me asking the questions. So If anybody has a question, can you unmute and yeah, fire away.
I'll start with an easy one, Isobel.
Yep.
What's your favorite interview on your podcast?
Oh, the favorite interview I've done on my podcast.
Yeah.
Oh, crikey. I don't know. That's embarrassing. My favorite, well, I don't have a specific ones, but it's the ones where I learn from, I love them all, to be honest. Like, I just find, maybe selfishly, I choose people to interview that I want to learn something from. And so that's why I've interviewed the people I have, because they're people I'm either inspired by or want to learn from. And that's what I feel. I feel I've been so lucky with my podcast. I've learned so much and spoken to so many amazing people that if I hadn't started the podcast, I would never have gotten to speak to half these people. My favorite, I don't know. I need some thinking time.
At the end of the interview.
Okay. I'll just secretly scroll through my phone here and try to look and see if I can remember.
All right. Peter, you've got a question?
Yeah, I was just in regards to Barkley, wondering, what do you consider as one of the most important things in terms of preparation for training for an event like that? Is it, like navigation? You said you wish you'd been able to do a bit more. Obviously, it's super hilly, but you're probably used to hills. We're flatlanded over here. But so weather, training in weather. Like which ones would you rate as the most highly necessary for Barkley?
That's the hard thing with Barkley, knowing, because, and that's also what's so hard about training for Barkley, is there's so much to train for, because in spite of it being hilly, it's actually, you need to go fast. So I would say, for starters, the nav, because if you're stuck out there on your own, you need to be able to navigate. But by the same token, you need to also be able to run fast over difficult terrain. Which, is hard too, obviously, because it's off trail. So I find it hard to run off trail because I trip on, I feel like I trip on everything. So it's, that's a component too, as well. And I mean, you only practice that through the navigating, because when you navigate, you go off trail, but it is a hard thing to do. But the navigating, I mean, ultimately you could, somehow team up with a veteran and just tag along, basically, at the end of the day, if you can keep up with them. So I prefer to be more self-reliant and know that if I don't have a veteran, that I can manage on my own.
How did you go about your navigation training? So were you just choosing random course out in the bush or picking spots and trying to find where to go? Or
no, we're really lucky here. We're really lucky here in Victoria. We've got a number of permanent courses, and also during lockdowns, they created these courses, electronic ones, that you run through the bush and that would beep when you find it, with a map, obviously. And but we've got a couple of permanent courses. We've got one out near Castlemaine in Victoria, and it's like a really rugged area, very similar to Frozen Head. And they've just got posts hidden away, and they've got maps with where they are, and I navigate and find them. So I've been very lucky with being able to use the permanent courses, because I'm a member of, Road Gaining Victoria and orienteering and all that. So they give me the maps and all that, and they've been a great help.
Right. I read many years ago, I read Nick Holland's race report, and he finished in 2013, and he said that he physically studied the maps for 12 months leading into the event. Have you done any of that?
Yeah, I mean, I've been studying the maps and that sort of stuff as well, probably not as much as I should have, because I mean, I've got to train and work, and I'm trying to fit everything in. But yeah, I mean, I have been, but yeah, not as much as I should have.
Really good question from Peter, because so like there are so many things involved in terms of getting ready for this. Like, you know, I was looking on your Strava and you're averaging about 150 Ks a week with 4,000 to 5,000 meters of elevation a week. Like, that's massive, you know, and yeah, where are you going to find the time for the other stuff? You know,
I know. Well, the rest of the time I'm just sleeping and eating. But you know, I've got my online coaching business, and I'm relief teaching in the local high school too, and you know, trying to be a good person, and you know, in the rest of my life. So yeah, it's a big focus, and it's all consuming, and which is quite exhausting.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, next question.
I've got a question. It's Sam here. Sorry, you can't see me. I'm back from hut to hut, so I'm halfway in my pajamas, so I apologise. Quick question. What was your biggest learn from 2019 that you would take into this year's event?
Basically,
there's probably many, I'm sure.
There is, you know, but basically how much faster I need to be, which is why, in spite of doing climbing, I'm really only doing 2 to 3 climbing sessions a week. The rest of the time I'm running on the flat, because if I did all my runs in the hills, I would, you know, you get slower. And I used to be fast. I'm not the speediest of runners anymore, but that's because I do such long distances. So it's that getting that fine line, finding that happy medium. But I think high fast, which is a relative term, of course, you know, I'm not talking super fast, but fast for the mountains. You need to be fast for the mountains, and to be able to be successful at Barkley.
So did that involve a lot of fast hiking?
Yes, I've done heaps of fast hiking training too. Because yeah, once again, it's not just about running fast, it's about moving fast. So I've done heaps of that. And like, I'm a lover of poles, and normally I will use poles in the race, but when I'm doing my fast hiking training, I won't use poles because I'm trying to strengthen my legs as much as possible.
Interesting. Yeah, thank you.
Cool. Who's got another one?
Isobel, just moving away from Barkley, with the 7 peaks training, what was the peak volume for that run? Sorry, and did you have a sleep and a nutrition strategy?
My run volume for that, I don't think it was as quite as high as this, or for as long. Maybe I think I had 1 week of like 140 odd. The rest of the time it was probably more like 120, 130. I went into the run with a sleep and nutrition strategy, and it all went out the window. I had my first sleep exactly as planned, but then I couldn't do my later sleeps that I'd planned, because as soon as I'd lie down, my legs were twitching and hurt so much I couldn't actually sleep. And the nutrition went out the window because the food, I had everything bagged up, 100, you know, all these little bags of everything ready to go. And then I just couldn't eat it because, I don't know, I just couldn't eat. It was just gross to me. And that's why I ended up famously like inhaling a whole chicken at one point, because that was the only thing. It was just happened to be sitting in the van. It wasn't meant to be for me. I don't know who it was for. And I just ate pretty much the whole thing. And that was the best thing for me. And then, but then later in the event, I found it harder again because my whole mouth swelled, my lips, my tongue. I got ulcers all over my gums. And so I couldn't actually swallow food. So I was having to have like this gruely porridge and just kind of try and shove it down my throat, because I couldn't even put a spoon in my mouth. So, you know, it was, and it taught me, I guess that's something I've really taken from that, is learning to adapt. That when everything, you know, turns to crap, there you can always find a way. You know, I found a way of getting nutrition in. I listened to my body, and when I couldn't run, when the pain was too much, you know, I mean, when I couldn't sleep because the pain was too much, you know, I just said, well, there's nothing for it, just keep going. And you learn how much you can endure from doing those sorts of things.
Just on the nutrition side of things, how do you work the nutrition going overseas for races? Like, I find that really difficult because,
yeah,
like, even their jelly beans taste different to our jelly beans. You know?
I know everything's different. I am going to take some of my Spring Energy gels over with me, but other than that, I won't be bringing any nutrition. And basically, I'll just try to eat. I perform better on real food. Like the Spring Energy gels are gels that are as close to real food as I can get, but they're, you know, obviously smaller and more portable, because of course there's no aid stations. I have to be able to go the whole time carrying everything. So, you know, I'll just eat what I basically listen to my body again and just eat what I can. Try when I come in to eat something that's a bit more substantial and will tide me over.
Will you have crew this time?
Yeah, my partner Ron is coming over with me.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Is there anybody else with a question?
I have a question. Like, what's your biggest fear in going into Barkley's, and sort of how do you overcome that mentally? Like, sort of stop thinking about the bad things that could happen.
Yeah.
Well, like, you know, not making cut-off is one of all my biggest fears all the time. But how do you?
Well, they're not making
overcome that
cut
mentally?
off. I guess, you know, that's kind of, I don't know, like that is a, you know, for everybody who goes to Barkley, that's a, you know, a likelihood. My big fear is navigating at night and getting lost and being by myself. Like, I'm not scared of running in the bush at night by myself. I'm not scared of that. Because I know my local trails and, you know, I know how to get home, but I don't know those trails, especially when I'm off trail. And I guess I'm a bit nervous about getting lost in the dark, in bad weather on my own. Yeah, so I did have a bit of a think about that today, and I had to stop myself thinking.
Yeah.
Because,
How do you stop yourself thinking about it?
oh, it was very hard. It still flashes into my head and it's like, stop. I just distract myself with something else, basically. You know, I don't know. When I work it out, I'll let you know.
I must say, while you were answering that question, I always say to these guys, don't put yourself in any situation the 2 weeks before an event where you're going to be thinking about negatives, and here we are firing all of these negatives at you. So I really apologise.
Positive thoughts.
Yes.
All right. Does anybody have a question?
I've got a question on Rachel's behalf because her microphone's not working. She said she wanted to ask how you train mentally for a race where you don't know the course, and how do you train to stay mentally alert when you're tired?
One thing I really struggle with is sleep deprivation, and I really don't like it. But in saying that, I do seem to manage to push through it. And in my last big run, what I did was when I was getting tired and I couldn't sleep, I just lay down and rested for like 20 minutes or something, which is not necessarily something I can do at Barkley. But even if I just, you know, on the side of the trail, I can sit down and have a, you know, I just find closing the eyes, because it's almost like there's too much information coming in and the brain can't work. I just need to close my eyes, even just for 5 minutes. And that helps me, I don't know, reboot, you know. It's like a Control-Alt-Delete, and that helps. Mentally, what was the first part of the question? Mentally preparing for a race that you don't know the course. Yep. Well, I kind of know the course. It changes, but not hugely each time. So, and yeah, I don't know the course, but kind of in my head, well, nobody knows the course, so it feels like a level playing field. So yeah, I guess that hasn't really overly bothered me. I don't know why, it just hasn't overly bothered me. So probably because whenever I've gone to races, and I know this is terrible, but I generally don't look at the course beforehand. I just go out and run. So I don't always know exactly what the course is going to be like anyway. So maybe that was secret training for Barkley and I just didn't know it.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. Like, one of the questions I had was, have you watched a lot, or before 2019, did you watch a lot of the YouTube videos that are there to try and get a feel for it?
Yeah, and I've been watching them again. You know, I just keep watching them over and over just to see the landscape again, you know, and try to make myself feel more familiar with how it all looks. So yes, I watched them all then, and I've watched them all again, a couple of times again.
Yeah, the Jamil Khoury one from 2018 is a good one.
Yeah.
Yeah, because he actually got a camera out on the course.
Yeah. I think that's been taken down though.
All right. Does anybody else have a question?
Okay, I'll jump in. Coming back to Barkley, right? How would you explain it to a novice? Because it's not really a pure ultra run, is it? It's a lot of other things. So it's not really testing your running capability. It's
it's sort of a hike. It's like a big Rogaine, basically. At the end of the day, it reminds me of a Rogaine, and that's really what I would say it is. It's a really long Rogaine, you know, and in some ways sort of reminiscent a bit almost of an adventure race too, because through the length of it, you know. So yeah, because it's not just a pure running at all. And even the things like, you know, not knowing when it starts, it's all designed to make you mentally unsettled. So you need to be the kind of person, and hopefully I am, where that's okay with you to not know things. To be fair, that's not normally the way I am. I like to know everything, but you know, you've got to be comfortable with not knowing. And a lot of this race, like I said, is designed to be mentally unsettling.
Is that why you're going back? I mean, it's the challenge of that aspect of, you know, not so much the running, but all the other aspects and pulling them together. Yeah. Yeah.
Like I just want to do better than last time, basically. You know, I really want to do better than last time. And the only way I can do that is to go back and have another crack. So we shall see, you know, and then from there, who knows? I don't know.
At least you'll have Harvey there, so
that's right. I'll just follow him.
That's right.
Yeah.
Can I ask one more question?
Yeah, go for it.
I may have missed this. My internet cut out for a bit, as it normally does. I was just wondering, like, how you got to go back again. You said you got a rollover, so you were supposed to go back in 2020. Was that like because you've gone once, you automatically get to go again, or did you have to apply in the same way, or what happens there?
I had to reapply in the same way, so it wasn't guaranteed that I would go back. And that's part of the reason why, even though I was over time and technically not finished a loop, I still finished it and got all the pages to prove that I could navigate the course and find all the pages and that sort of thing. And I did that in the hope that that would mean I could come back. And I'm not sure if I'm sure that wasn't the only reason, but I'm sure that played a part in it. So yes, I had to reapply for 2020, and since then it's been a rollover. So this is like my 2020 entry.
Yeah, cool.
During 2019, were there any times during that where you did get really low?
Yeah, I mean, there was some spots when Shaka and I were on top of one of the mountains and it was raining and blowing a gale and freezing, and it was just a single track like along the top of this mountain, but we just we kept getting diverted onto these other little dodgy single tracks that weren't real ones, but in the dark, you couldn't tell. And we just were running backwards and forwards for like an hour or so. And we knew it wasn't far back to camp, but we literally could not find the main trail back to camp, even though it in the daytime super obvious. And it was like really upsetting for both of us and getting quite frustrating because we knew how close we were. And yet we just could not find the main trail. I mean, eventually we did, obviously, because I'm here. But it was just one of those moments that it was just like, oh, we've just had enough. We just want to be back. And then finally got down the mountain and we had to cross this river and we're soaking wet and there's some rocks and I slipped on the rock and fell completely in the river. And it was just like, oh my God, you know, and it's freezing and it's like, can it get any worse? But then before we knew it, we're out in the bitumen running up to the campground and, you know, and there we were done for 2019, you know. So it had some really cool moments that, you know, you look back on and think, wow, what an adventure, you know.
Yeah. How many hours was that?
I can't remember. It was 16 hours or something like that. And to finish the loop and be in the running for the fun run, it has to be like around 13 hours.
Cool. Okay. Does anybody have a question?
Now I just asked a basic question. How did you get into ultra running?
So I used to race marathons and it's sort of convoluted how I got into ultra running. So I did 6-foot track as a training for Gold Coast. I was going up to Gold Coast to do a sub 3-hour marathon and just for fun, I did 6-foot and I ended up winning that. And I was thinking, God, the trails are so much fun. And when I did Gold Coast, that really reaffirmed for me how much more fun the trails were. And so then I went off and did, you know, long distance mountain running overseas. And from that, you know, once you've done a distance, you want to go further. So that was marathon distance. So then I just wanted to go further. And I'd always had this desire within myself to go run further. I was brought up bushwalking, you know, as a child in the high country, you know, like we'd go out all day, sleep in the huts, get up and do it all again. So I was used to long time on my feet. So it wasn't anything, you know, completely alien to me. But I just find that once I started going longer, I'm like a diesel engine. I can just keep going and going and going. And it feels good for me.
What do the logistics look like for next week? Like, do you fly into Knoxville or?
Yeah, so we're flying into Knoxville and we don't arrive till the evening. So we're going to stay in a hotel so we can have a good night's sleep. I've got a camper van booked, just a small one. And then we'll head out to the park and just, you know, I've got a campsite booked and we'll stay there and have a bit of an explore of the park and yeah.
So how many days will you be in the park before the race?
I don't know, around a week or so.
All right. Okay, cool.
Yeah. Enough time to get over the jet lag and, you know, that sort of thing and get ourselves sort of organised in camp.
Is that quite normal for runners in the race getting there that's, you know, that far ahead of the start?
I'm sure there'll be people already there.
Very good.
Yeah, and if I, you know, lived in America, I probably would be too.
Yeah. Okay. One last question, sort of moving away from Barkley a little bit, and that is, I know you have an interest in track races.
Yep.
Yeah. Is that something that you're still looking at? Like I think, you know, your 24-hour was just under 200K.
Yep.
Yeah. Is that still something in the background?
Yeah, I sometimes do wonder because when I did that, you know, like I'd come from Melbourne where I'd been training in like through the winter because it was in Queensland in winter, but it was summer temperatures for me. It was 35 degrees, you know, and so coming from having trained in like 5 degrees, it was a bit of a shock to the system. And I kind of always thought, well, you know, under such trying conditions for me, if I got close to 200 on my first attempt, imagine what I could do if I did it in cooler weather and, you know, but I just kind of never got around to it. So sometimes I wonder, but then sometimes I think, oh, I don't know if I could handle the track again. Like it's mentally tough in a completely different way, but still incredibly mentally tough.
Yeah, no, I'd love to see you give it a go, because it's
so many things to do.
fantastic. All right, okay. Well, I think we'll finish it up there. We're really close to the hour, so thank you, Isobel. That's absolutely terrific. Loved it, and we wish you all the very, very best for next week. And I just I think you're just such a great example. A number of these guys have run delirious 100-miler, 200-miler last week, and we've been talking about those being learning experiences for the next time, and I think that's my takeaway of what you've told us today. And Barkley is absolutely that. Like, you can't hope to go there the first time and do really well. And you know, the fact that you're looking at it as a 2 or even 3 time event that you'll be looking to, I think that says a lot. So yeah, no, thank you, Isobel.
Thank you for having me on.
Okay, fantastic.